Discover 3 spine-chilling true stories of sinister lighthouses that hold haunting secrets. The wind howled like a banshee through the desolate cliffs of Harrow's Point, the Keeper's lighthouse casting an eerie glow across the relentless waves of Lake Michigan. Once a proud beacon of safety, it now stood as a monument of dread, echoing a chilling past filled with dark whispers of the vanished. They say that those who dared to draw near were claimed by whispers that came from the deep, leaving behind nothing but cold shadows and empty nets. Families and fishermen all knew the stories and avoided that cursed spot, but the Williams family, craving adventure and escape, saw only a chance to rekindle their ties. Tom, Sarah, Emma, and little Max settled into their repurposed lighthouse with excitement, the salty breeze promising healing from their busy lives in Chicago. But as they unpacked, the town's peculiar silence wrapped around them like a cloak. The locals were polite, but the glances they exchanged were full of something unspoken, a warning lost in the waves. At first, the family overlooked it, letting the whispers of the winds drown out the subtle unease. But as night fell, shadowy figures flickered just beyond the frosted windows, dancing on the outer periphery of their sight, leaving their hearts racing and their instincts screaming. And then, there was the locked room at the end of a damp corridor. A chill swept through Emma and Max as they noticed it. An air of menace surrounded that door, thickening with each passing hour. What secrets lay behind it? They would not be deterred. One stormy evening, as thunder cracked like a whip above them, they discovered a rusted key buried in an old foghorn. Their hearts thundered as they unlocked the door, the hinges creaking like bones in an ancient grave. Inside, dust clung to the air, heavy and choking. And there it was, a journal, its cover cracked and faded. It belonged to a long-ago lighthouse keeper, detailing horrifying rituals designed to appease restless spirits of the lake. Each page turned unleashed a wave of dread, detailing sacrifices human lives lost to propitiate the dark waters. Emma and Max trembled as they shared their findings while clenching each other's hands, the once inviting charm of the lighthouse now a facade. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. But fear had already woven itself into the fabric of their family. Mr. Hargrove, the genial neighbor, warned them in hushed tones, his gaze too intense. Best to let sleeping spirits lie, he warned, and the underlying threat sent chills down their spines. Paranoia crackled through the air like electricity. Tom felt the weight of disapproving stares as he sat, alone at the diner. Emma and Max could hear the whispers growing louder, the fishing community slipping away like fog, avoiding them. Then came that fateful night the wind howled angrily, rattling the lighthouse like a vengeful spirit. The shadowy figures returned, and the voices called softly but insistently, echoing from the depths of Harrow's Point. What started as a retreat to restore their family soon spiraled into a living nightmare, punctuated by chilling revelations. The family now faced a terror far beyond their imagination. The lighthouse wasn't merely a building. It was a prison of history, a guardian of dark secrets, and they had stumbled into its grasp. Would they uncover the truth hidden within its walls, or would Harrow's Point claim them as its next dreadful secret? Wind whipped through the jagged cliffs as if the very essence of Harrow's Point had come alive, restless and angry. Inside the lighthouse, the Williams family huddled in the living area, the shadows dancing ominously on the walls. An oppressive weight hung in the air, thick and suffocating. They barely spoke, communicating instead through frightened glances and clenched fists. Tom stared at the old journal, its pages crumpled and yellowed. Each line revealed horrifying truths that gnawed at the edges of his sanity. Emma whimpered as she skimmed the pages, her fingers trembling. "Why didn't we listen?" she whispered, a tremor lacing her voice. The wind howled outside, drowning their words in a feral crescendo. A deep, throaty laugh echoed somewhere in the darkness, sending icy fingers crawling up their spines. Max buried his face in his mother's side, and Sarah fought to suppress her own rising panic. "It's just the wind," she muttered, but even she could feel the lie rolling off her tongue. A loud bang reverberated through the lighthouse, and the walls shook, as if protesting their intrusion. Tom leaped to his feet, heart racing. "What was that?" he shouted, voice cracking. "It's just the storm," he insisted, but doubt gnawed at him. They had passed the point of reason long ago. From a darkened corner, Emma pointed. "The door, it's moving." With dread pooling in his stomach, Tom turned to find the locked door slowly creaking open. A breeze, colder than the depths of the lake, swept in, chilling them to the bone. The door opened wider, revealing a deep blackness behind it, swallowing the feeble light. "Stay here," Tom commanded, voice barely steady as he stepped toward the door, compelled by a force he couldn't understand. Shadows twisted and twirled, beckoning him. Time morphed. Seconds felt like hours as he gripped the door frame, the thick air pulsing with disembodied whispers that filled his ears. He stepped inside, his heart hammering like a war drum. The room smelled like decay, and the sounds of the storm morphed into indistinguishable murmurs that urged him forward. A single rickety table stood in the center, littered with items that looked both ancient and unsettling: bones, charred wood, and rotting offerings. This was no mere storage, it was a shrine for something far darker than spirits. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind him. Tom whipped around just in time to see the keyhole glow in indigo blue, shadows swirling like living smoke. Panic gripped him. He pounded on the door, calling for his family, but his voice was swallowed by the sinister atmosphere. Back in the living area, Sarah and the kids huddled closer together, listening as the whispers erupted beyond the door. "What have we done?" she cried out. "He shouldn't have gone in there." The whispers rose in pitch, twisting into agonized wails that echoed through the lighthouse, reverberating off the damp walls, sending despair coursing through every fiber of their being. Max screamed, eyes wide with terror. "Mom, where's Dad?" Time stretched painfully as the echoes intensified, molding into a chant, a haunting, desperate melody that felt like a summoning. The air thickened with an overwhelming dread, curling around them like a serpent ready to strike. In the depths of that dark room, Tom dropped to his knees, clutching his head as the voices sharpened, clawing at his sanity. "Please stop," he begged, but the shadows only lunged closer, coiling tighter around his terror. With one final gasping breath, something surged through him, a realization that made his blood run cold. He were not alone. The spirits had made their choice, and he was ensnared in their dark pact. Back in the living room, fear froze the Williams family as the whispers shifted, morphing into a single, chilling phrase that echoed through the lighthouse. One must be given to take another. Would Tom escape the clutches of doom, or would their unwilling sacrifice seal their fate in Harrow's Point? The storm raged on, but within the lighthouse, something darker was stirring. Would they dare to uncover the next terrifying secret that lay hidden in the shadows? The room was alive with an unseen menace, the walls constricting around Tom like a noose. He struggled to breathe, the air thickening with malevolent intent. The voices grew louder, a cacophony of despair, each whisper heavy with promises of suffering. Join us, they hissed. He pressed his palms against his ears, but it was futile. The shadows danced, swirling into grotesque shapes, taunting him with glimpses of their true forms, hollow eyes, and twisted smiles that seemed to ooze malice. Meanwhile, in the living area, Sarah clutched Max and Emma, their collective fear an unholy bond that tethered them to one another. The shadows from the door gripped the room's corners, stretching and shuddering as if alive. The wailing crescendo seemed to compel her to act, and in her mind, she felt the weight of her husband's absence crushing down on her. "Maybe he can hear us," Emma suggested, her voice barely a whisper. "Maybe we can help him." Sarah hesitated. What if going in there only makes it worse? She glanced towards the ominous door, heart racing. But the thought of leaving Tom behind, lost in that suffocating dark, fueled her resolve. They had to try. Tom had begun to rise again, fighting the pull of the darkness, but it was too much. The sinister power wrapping around him felt like chains made of fog, dragging him deeper into despair. "No, I must," he gasped, fighting back against the encroaching shadows, but they only tightened their grip. As Sarah approached the door, She could feel the cold radiating from it, more powerful than the storm outside. She placed her hand on the wood, trembling. It pulsed under her palm, as if it had a heartbeat of its own. "Together, we can do this," she said, her voice steadying against the fear. Emma and Max nodded, grasping each other's hands tightly. The four could somehow feel a bizarre connection through the door. It thrummed with energy, beckoning them closer. With a deep breath, Sarah twisted the knob, and the door swung open, casting an unnatural light that pierced through the shadows. Tom stood, hunched on the ground, eyes wild, surrounded by an ethereal glow. As it dimmed, he looked up and saw Sarah half lit by that eerie glow, a lifeline amidst the chaos. "Tom," she shouted, rushing to him. "We're here. We can help you." As she reached for him, the whispers spiked in intensity, howling, angry at their intrusion. The shadows tried to pull Tom back, wrenching him away from the light of his family. "No, don't let him go," Emma screamed, squeezing her mother's hand like a vice. Desperation hung thick in the air. With newfound resolve, Sarah threw her other arm around Tom. "We need to." Before she could finish, something surged from the shadows, wrapping around their wrists. The room grew darker as cold fingers snaked back around Tom, attempting to reclaim him. "One must be given to take another." The ominous chant surged forth, echoing like a funeral dirge. Suddenly, Sarah felt the weight of a decision rest squarely on her heart. Would she sacrifice herself to save Tom, or would they try to escape, leaving him trapped? In that pregnant moment, everything hung in the balance. The shadows pulsed with hunger, waiting with bated breath for their choice. With a breath that tasted of metal, Sarah made her decision. She would fight for all of them. Outside, the storm raged with fury, but inside the lighthouse, a different storm began to brew, a reckoning that would either tear them apart or bind them together forever. In the darkness, the walls echoed back. One must be given. What would they sacrifice to lift the curse? And now that the door was open, what awaited them beyond the point of no return? The shadows surged forward, a wave of darkness eager to claim its prize. Sarah clung to Tom as the cold fingers tightened around them, squeezing so hard her breath caught in her throat. She could feel the icy tendrils slithering up her arms, threatening to claw away her sanity. "Stay with me," she urged, her heart pounding like a war drum, each beat resonating with desperation. "Fight it. Please, fight it." Tom's voice was a whisper, almost lost beneath the tumultuous whispers surrounding them. They grew louder, more insistent, stirring the air with a malevolence that made her skin crawl. It felt like they were pulling not just at Tom, but at the very fabric of her soul. Emma and Max, trembling, anchored Sarah's resolve. Her children's wide eyes glimmered with fear, mirroring the storm raging within the lighthouse. The shadows flickered, shifting in and out like distorted memories, their hollow eyes fixated on Sarah. "Mom," Max's voice broke through the chaos. "We can't let them take him." The intensity in his small gaze made her painfully aware of the stakes. They were all in this together. Then came a whisper, a clear, chilling voice cutting through the others. "One must be given to take another." The chant grew stronger, vibrating through their bones. The shadows thickened, enveloping the room in a sickening darkness that felt almost sentient, like a living entity grasping for their essence. "We have to break this binding together," Sarah shouted, gathering her family close. "On three, we pull him through." "Mom," Emma started, fear casting shadows across her face. "Count," Sarah commanded, though deep down, she felt the fear gnawing at her resolve. What if this didn't work? One, the shadows shuddered, as if anticipating the moment of despair. Two, a chill snaked down Sarah's spine. The walls vibrated, howling their discontent, rushing air carrying the cries of the damned. Three, they pulled as hard as they could, a united front against the encroaching dark. Tom's body lurched forward, caught between two worlds, and for a moment, she felt the cold easing, but the shadows unleashed a howl of fury. With one agonizing force, they wrenched at Tom, dragging him back. "No, Tom," Sarah yelled, feeling the fabric of reality begin to unravel. Their grip weakened, her blood pounding in her ears as she fought against the onslaught. In that terrifying instant, Tom's face twisted with a blend of pain and determination. "Sarah, remember, the lighthouse needs a sacrifice." The words hit her like a blow, reality crashing down like breaking glass. He hadn't just been a captive. He was part of something bigger, a dark cycle that needed to be fed. A decision was spiraling into place, her heart battling against the truth that threatened to sink her into despair. "No," she yelled, desperation flooding her voice. "I won't let them take you." But the shadows pulsed harder. The air shifted, filled with a thick, unnatural energy that crackled with desperation and fear. Alex's presence pushed deeper into her mind, the room spinning, clashing memories of love and sacrifice born from a depth she didn't want to comprehend. "Mom, we can't leave him," Emma screamed, eyes wide with raw panic, a mirror of her own bleeding heart. The voice, so clear now, echoed again. "One must be given. Are we to pay the price?" Sarah whispered, staring into Tom's pleading eyes. The truth settled in her bones like iron, cold and heavy. Sarah closed her eyes, breath hitching in her throat, and felt the decision looming. Then, a sudden force, a rush of wind. The room swirled, energy crackling around them, ready to unleash its fury. She felt lightheaded, the shadows holding her attention and her fears steady. "Mom, don't. Please," Emma begged. But as Sarah's heart raced, she realized it was no longer just about them. The lighthouse had become a living being, feeding off their fear, strengthening its grip with every pulse and every heartbeat. What lay before them would either shatter their family or bond them through an unimaginable price. Tom's face twisted in anguish. "Sarah, find a way to save us." And with that, the shadows screamed in one final, deafening wail. The darkness retreated momentarily, revealing a sliver of light interspersed with confusion and horror. A strange path opened before them, yet she knew it was a cruel trick. Would she make the ultimate sacrifice, or could they escape before the shadows claimed one of them? In that flickering moment of hope and despair, a chilling realization struck Sarah like lightning. The darkness was not just in the room, it lurked within each of them, clawing at their hearts. "Something is coming," Max shivered, swallowing hard. And as if presented by fate, a new figure emerged from the dark, cloaked in swirling shadows. Sarah felt her mother's voice within her mind, begging her to remember what awaited them just beyond the door. The new figure stepped forward, the shadows swirling around it like a shroud of despair. Sarah squinted against the dim light, trying to discern its features. It seemed to breathe the very darkness that enclosed them, its form bending and twisting, as if it were both present and absent at once. "Mom," Emma cried, clutching her brother's arm tightly. "Stay back," Sarah shouted, stepping protectively in front of her children. But her heart was racing for another reason. This entity felt familiar, a pulse of energy that resonated deep within her being. "Sarah," it croaked, the voice pulling her in. "You know me." It was unmistakable, a whisper from her past she had buried deep, a reminder of choice and consequence. It was her mother, or at least the remnant of what once was. "Mom." Sarah's voice trembled, a fragile thread of hope woven with fear. She wanted to reach out, to bridge the chasm of memories separating them, but the shadows surged, growling in response. "You must choose, my darling," the figure implored, eyes flickering as they reflected the room's chaos. "You must decide what price you're willing to pay." The room felt smaller, the walls closing in with each word. "I can't. I want tea," Sarah shouted, backing away, her pulse racing. She felt her children's anxious breaths against her back, their eyes wide with a confusion that twisted deeper into her soul. "Tom, please," Sarah shouted, as if he could somehow pull away from the inexorable grasp of the shadows. "Fight them. We'll find a way." The shadows screeched in unison, as if it hurt them to hear hope being uttered. "One must be given," they chanted more loudly now, echoing through the air like a siren song, crafting a painful melody that tempted fate. "Mom, we can't let them have Dad," Emma pleaded, her voice trembling against the mounting terror. "We can't." But what if it was true? If Tom was meant to be part of the sacrifice? A pit formed in Sarah's stomach. She gritted her teeth, the weight of the moment heavy as the shadows pressed closer, whispering their threats. "Decide." The shadowy figure gestured, dark fingers dancing toward the flickering light with eerie grace. "The lighthouse hungers. It has chosen its vessel." "Mom, please," Max cried again, smaller now, just a child needing his mother. Sarah felt the edges of her resolve fracturing. She gazed into Tom's tortured gaze. We'll find another way. But part of her wondered if this nightmare was the fate they were destined for. She could feel the shadows tightening, sliding into her thoughts, tempting her to the brink. Trust your mother. Sarah, her mother's voice tremored softly around them, blurring the lines between reality and illusion. Trust me, Mom, Sarah shouted as new shapes began to flicker in the shadows. Twisted, grotesque faces materialized, howling echoes of those lost to the darkness. Their hollow eyes seemed to watch, waiting for her to cave. What have you done? Emma gasped, pulling the darkness away as if it could burn. The chilling realization hit Sarah. This wasn't just a battle for Tom. It was a war for their family, for their very souls. She could feel the shadows whispering secrets of the lighthouse, offering promises wrapped in deceit. Take your time, Sarah, the shadowy figure taunted, a twisted grin breaking through its darkness. The lighthouse will keep you safe if only one of you submits. Please, the word escaped Sarah's lips, just above a whisper as she felt her feet firmly planted in both hope and dread. Did she have the strength to reach for the light amidst the shadows, or would she choose the darkness to save what was left? In that moment, a deafening crack echoed through the lighthouse. The foundation trembled, deep shadows swirling faster, their wicked forms swirling like a turbulent sea. They were hungry. Mom, what do we do? Emma yelled, face pale and drawn, a reflection of the fear clawing at Sarah's heart. But just as uncertainty clouded her mind, a truth burned bright. A choice must be made. And as the shadows screeched in agony, vibrations filled the room, reminding her that the end was just beginning. Before she could voice her decision, the lighthouse groaned, and the floor beneath them shook violently, a haunting call for all their pain to come to fruition. What will it demand? Max whispered. With eyes locked on the darkness swirling around them, Sarah knew they were running out of time. Would the next decision break or bind them? And there, in the center of chaos, a door creaked open to reveal something far worse than shadows. What was waiting for them on the other side? The door creaked wider, revealing the darkness inside, thicker than the rest. A chill swept through the room, wrapping around Sarah like icy fingers. What is that? Emma murmured, her voice small, almost lost in the rising dread. Stay back, Sarah ordered, instinctively pulling her children closer. The air buzzed with anticipation, an electric hum that sent shivers racing down her spine. The darkness seeped out, a thick, suffocating fog that clawed at their resolve. What do you want? She called into the void, desperation tinging her voice. No answer came, just the swirling shadows, taunting her with the weight of unspoken truths. Mom, I don't like this, Max cried, pressing against her, fear radiating off him like heat from a fire. Suddenly, a form began to emerge from the depths of the doorway, stepping forward with agonizing slowness. It was small at first, a shape writhing and twisting in the darkness, but then it grew, looming larger, solidifying into the shape of a child. Her heart sank as recognition hit. Lucy? The name slipped past Sarah's lips, heavy with disbelief. The figure lunged forward, its features obscured by shadows. She could just make out the wild hair, the pleading eyes that once sparkled with joy now dulled by sorrow. I'm here, Sarah Lucy whispered, her voice echoing hollowly. Help me. No, Emma shouted, tears brimming. That is not her. It's pretending. But how can you know? Sarah's voice was strained, caught between disbelief and the overwhelming urge to protect. Lucy stretched her arms, her small fingers clawing at the air, reaching for Sarah as if it pained her to stay in the shadows. You have to choose. You promised me. Choose what? Sarah felt her knees weaken, the ground beneath her trembling. Was this really Lucy? This wasn't just a haunting. It was a distraction, a lure. The shadows tightened around her, whispering truths she didn't want to face. No, Mom. Don't. Emma cried, eyes wide, filled with fear. It's a trick. The shadows began to pulse, rising and falling in waves, as if feeding off their fear. A cacophony of whispers filled the air, mingling with Lucy's fading cries. Sarah couldn't tell where one voice ended and the others began. I'm not afraid of you, Sarah shouted defiantly, trying to push back against the haze of despair suffocating her spirit. Then you will lose everything, the shadowy figure hissed. Its voice swirled with the cacophony, bitter laughter lacing its words as it drew nearer. "We need to leave," Max shouted, pointing his finger urgently at the door. "Where?" Sarah felt the weight of the shadows pressing down on her, attempting to draw her into their inky depths. But there was another choice, a way out if only she could find it amidst the chaos. "Mom." Emma's voice cut through her thoughts as the room dimmed, the light struggling to hold its ground against the burgeoning shadows. The laughter turned into a cackle, chilling Sarah to her core. In that moment of terror, the walls began to pulse, breathing as if an unseen creature were trapped within. The lighthouse beckoned, a siren song laden with promises too dreadful to comprehend. Before Sarah could answer, the ground cracked open, splintering with a deafening roar. The room shifted, tumbling like a nightmare spiraling out of control. Was this how it ended? Or could she grasp the light one last time? "Run!" Sarah screamed, gripping her children tightly as the shadows clawed for them, desperate to pull them into oblivion. The door loomed behind her, a sliver of hope amongst the growing dread. With one last glance into the dark void, where Lucy had been, she felt the weight of her decision crash down, breaking every fiber of her being. The shadows screamed as they lunged forward just as Sarah made a desperate dash for the door, heart racing, footsteps pounding, racing against the tide of darkness spilling from the shadows. But what lay beyond the threshold? Would the lighthouse finally reveal its secrets, or had they just triggered a horror far greater than they could imagine? As they thundered through the door, it slammed shut with a ferocious bang, swirling darkness hidden behind it. And there, in a heartbeat's breath, everything went silent only for a chilling echo to break the quiet. One must be given what awaited them in the silent aftermath. The silence was thick, almost suffocating. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest, the sound drowning out everything else. She squeezed her children tightly, as if they could shield her from the unknown. The air was heavy, electric, filled with the lingering whispers of the darkness they had left behind. "Are we safe?" Max trembled, looking up at her with wide, innocent eyes. Every time the shadows whispered, another piece of his childhood slipped away. "I don't know," Sarah admitted, glancing around. They stood in a narrow corridor, dimly lit by a flickering bulb overhead. The walls, cold and damp, were lined with peeling paint that flaked off like dead skin. Old paintings hung crooked, their subjects' faces smeared as if in agony. "Where are we?" Emma asked, her voice small, fear etched in every inquisitive wrinkle of her brow. With a deep breath, Sarah moved forward cautiously, not knowing whether retreating or advancing was the better option. "Just stay close," she whispered, feeling the pulse of fear throb in her head. They edged along the corridor, each step echoing on the wooden floorboard like a heartbeat fading into the night. Suddenly, a loud crash jolted them, a cacophony reverberating from the depths of the lighthouse. It sounded as if an entire room had been upended. Sarah's pulse quickened, every instinct screaming for her to run. But something pulled her feet to the ground. She had to find the truth. "Did you hear that?" Emma's voice was barely above a whisper, her eyes darting around. "Let us check it out," Sarah said, forcing a steadiness she didn't feel. They crept towards the sound, the shadows awkwardly shifting, as if the darkness itself was alive, swirling and writhing just out of sight. They turned a corner and stumbled into a larger chamber bathed in a sickly green hue. Dust motes danced in the feeble light, and a table stood in the center, covered with an odd assortment of trinkets and faded photographs. It felt wrong, like a ritual site waiting for participants to arrive. "Mom, I don't like this," Max whimpered, clinging to her sleeve. "Just a little further. We'll find a way out," Sarah reassured him, though doubt gnawed at her. As they approached the table, she noticed something out of place, a small, blackened lantern sitting alone on one side. Its glass was cracked, as if it had been smashed in a fit of rage. "What's that?" Emma pointed, but before Sarah could respond, a gust of wind howled through the open window, extinguishing the faint light bulbs. In an instant, darkness engulfed them, swallowing any sense of security. "Stay together," Sarah shouted, feeling panic rise within her. Max's sobs echoed painfully in the cold void, and Emma grasped her hand tight. Then she heard it, a deep, echoing laughter, ringing out from nowhere and everywhere. It bounced off the walls, a cruel sound that reverberated in her bones. The laughter twisted into words, dark and commanding. One must be given. What does that mean? Emma's voice trembled terrifiedly. I don't know, Sarah cried, just as the lantern flickered to life. They all froze, its dim glow revealing a figure cloaked in shadows. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. It was a silhouette of a twisted child, similar to Lucy, but more grotesque. Do you want your Lucy back? It rasped, drawing impossibly closer, as if reality itself distorted around its presence. Run! Sarah screamed, every part of her screaming that this was wrong. They turned, hearts racing back down the corridor. But as they fled, a chilling truth dripped into her mind. What if one must be given was not just a riddle, but a bloody price to pay? They ran hard, breathing raggedly, past halls that seemed to narrow as if closing in on them. Each corner held shadows that leered and taunted. Behind them, the laughter echoed again, twining into their fear like a festering wound. Out of the dimness, Sarah saw a door ahead, painted a sickly gray. It looked like freedom, and hope surged inside her. But in that same moment, she felt cold dread roll over her. What if the darkness they fled was just a moment behind? What if it followed them, relentless and hungry? Mom, Max whispered, his eyes pleading. Sarah hesitated, caught between the door ahead and the foul presence of whatever lurked behind them. I love you both, she uttered softly, and at that moment, she understood with terrible clarity what might have to be given. With the door looming larger, they ran. But the echoing laughter promised that whatever they escaped was not finished yet. What would they sacrifice to find the truth? And would it lead to freedom or doom? The door swung open, splintering the darkness just enough for Sarah to see a dimly lit staircase spiraling down into the bowels of the lighthouse. Without a moment to consider, they plunged forward, putting as much distance between them and the whispering shadows as they could. Each step echoed like a gunshot in the stillness, and the air grew colder, sending icy tendrils creeping up their spines. Max pressed against Sarah's leg, his little body trembling like a leaf. Emma moved with cautious determination, her grip locked around her mother's arm as if it were a lifeline. Keep moving, Sarah urged, forcing her voice not to quiver. Her heart hammered a frantic beat against her ribs, every instinct screaming to flee. But where? The laughter still danced in the air above, a reminder that something far worse might be lurking behind them. They reached the bottom of the staircase and spilled out into another room, this one smaller and cloaked in deep shadows. A flickering light bulb swung from the ceiling, illuminating the room sporadically, casting monstrous shapes that writhed against the walls. Sarah's breath hitched in her throat as she took in her surroundings. Shelves lined the walls, filled with old books and bizarre artifacts, their meanings lost long ago to the encroaching darkness. Mom, Emma whispered, her voice barely a ghost. What if we don't find Lucy? I can't think about that now, Sarah replied, her voice low and urgent. They moved deeper into the chamber, the flickering light creating an illusion of movement. Everything felt tainted and alive, as if the very walls were pressing in on them with a malevolent intent. Look, Max pointed to a darkened corner, where the light barely reached. A tattered blanket lay strewn across the floor, and next to it, an old doll, its porcelain face chipped and cracked, stared up at them with staring, soulless eyes. A chill slithered down Sarah's spine. Don't touch that, she hissed, urgency blending with fear as she moved closer, examining the doll. It had the same twisted smile as the shadow child from moments before, the comparison striking a gut-wrenching root of terror deep within her. Just then, a cold wind blew through the room, a gust so powerful it knocked the light bulbs swinging wildly, casting the shadows into a frenzy. As if in response, the laughter came again, louder this time, a cruel symphony echoing from the walls. Panic surged within Sarah. What must be given? Emma whispered, echoing the words that haunted them still. The lantern, Max cried suddenly, his eyes wide as he pointed to the shadowy corner where the blackened lantern remained. We have to find it. Are you out of your mind? Sarah blurted. But even as she spoke, something pulled her towards that corner, the same pull that had drawn her to the table upstairs. The laughter intensified, taking on a maddening cadence, making her teeth grind. Mom, we have to, Emma insisted. Please. Torn between fear and an inexplicable need to discover the truth, Sarah breathed deeply and nodded. They moved toward the lantern. Its presence felt like a palpable weight. As they neared, the atmosphere grew thick with anticipation something was waiting. And then, just as Sarah reached for the lantern, the floor shuddered beneath them. A malevolent growl rumbled through the very core of the lighthouse. The books on the shelves rattled, and shadows twisted around them like serpents, crawling closer, seeping into every crevice. "Run!" Sarah shouted again, snatching the lantern. She felt a surge of energy travel through her body. Was this the answer? Or merely another trap? But before she could think further, the shadows lunged, coalescing into a nightmarish form of figure that resembled Lucy, but warped, with hollow eyes and a gaping smile that devoured the light. "Give me what I want." It roared, and the ground beneath their feet crackled with energy. "Let us go," Sarah screamed, pushing her children ahead toward yet another exit as she grasped the lantern tight. But it was too late. The darkness ignited, expanding around them as laughter pierced through the air, twisting into a wail that made her blood run cold. What must she sacrifice? What did the lantern hold within? As they fled, the understanding dawned prematurely, heavy and suffocating, and Sarah felt the darkness close in on her. Was this the moment everything would change? And just when she thought they might escape the clutches of the dark, a sickening realization struck her. What if, to save herself, she had to give up one of them? They bolted through the chamber, shadows clawing at their heels, the laughter transforming into a haunting symphony of despair. Sarah's heart raced as she propelled herself and her children toward a narrow door at the far end, the air thick with the smell of damp and decay. She could almost feel the cold darkness reaching for them, desperate to ensnare them once more. "Mom, I can't keep running," Max whimpered, gasping for breath. The tight grip of his small hand nearly slipped from hers. "Just a little longer," Sarah urged, forcing her legs to move faster, pushing through the looming dread that enveloped them. Each step felt heavier, the weight of the lantern growing more oppressive, binding her to the horror around them. Somewhere behind, she could sense the presence of that twisted figure Lucy, or what remained of her drawing closer, hungry for her grasp. Just as they reached the door, a violent tremor rocked the floor, and a rumble echoed through the walls. It felt like the lighthouse itself was protesting their escape. The children screamed as Sarah flung herself through the door, pulling both of them past the threshold and into another dark corridor. The light flickered wildly above them, bathing their escape in an eerie glow. "Where do we go now?" Emma's voice was small, lost beneath the cacophony of their frantic breaths. "Keep moving," Sarah commanded, her voice stronger than she felt. She hesitated momentarily, searching her memory for something, anything, that might lead them to safety. "Mom, the lantern. What do we do with it?" Max pleaded, terror rising in his voice. Before she could respond, a distant, chilling laugh spiraled through the corridor, slithering around them like a serpent. It sent a fresh wave of panic crashing through her. She couldn't stop now. They had to find a way out. The corridor spiraled tighter, the walls pressing in like the jaws of a beast. Shadows danced ominously around them, flickering in and out of visibility. The air grew colder, and an otherworldly dread crawled up Sarah's spine. Each heartbeat echoed in her ears, matching the pulsating rhythm of the flickering light above. "Mom, what must be given?" Emma's question landed heavily in the thick air, a weight they couldn't ignore. "I don't know," Sarah snapped, panic bleeding into her voice. What was the lantern asking of her? The answers felt just beyond her grasp, tangled in fear and urgency. They rounded a corner sharply, and to Sarah's horror, they stumbled into a vast chamber, the size of a cathedral. The ceiling soared, disappearing into shadow. Broken furniture lay strewn about, and remnants of what felt like a long-abandoned life scattered haphazardly across the floor. Ghostly remnants of past whispers hung in the air, wrapping around her like a suffocating shroud. There, at the center, stood an altar of sorts, old, wooden, and covered in dust, but something glinted atop it. A mirror, framed in tarnished gold. Sarah's breath hitched as she felt drawn to it, like a moth to a flame. She stepped closer, compelled to discover the truth. "Mom, don't!" Emma shouted, grabbing her arm, fear illuminating her features. "Why?" "Because it could be a trap." But the mirror called to her, a strange promise lurking just beneath its surface. A flicker of light danced across the reflective glass, and for a moment, Sarah thought she saw Lucy's face or what was left of it trapped inside. Her expression twisted in anguish. "Do you see her?" Sarah whispered, heart racing. "Yes, there, but no. Let us go." Emma pulled her back, but the lantern surged in Sarah's hands, illuminating the darkness with an intensity that threw breathtaking shadows around them. "What must be given?" Sarah murmured again, her mind racing. "What are you asking for?" And then, the laughter came again, echoing through the chamber, mingling with Lucy's tormented expression in the mirror. The shadows thickened, and Sarah felt the ground tremble beneath her once more. A reckoning was coming, and one thing was for certain: either she would discover the truth, or they would all be consumed by the darkness. With a surge of desperation, she realized that her choice was looming. Would she have to sacrifice a piece of herself to save her children, or would one of them have to pay the price? The answer hung in the air, heavy with dread. Just then, the voice of the darkness slithered into her ear, silky and venomous. "Give me what I want, or lose them both." Was that an escape she dared to chase? And what could she possibly offer in return? The lantern pulsed in Sarah's grasp, its warmth igniting flickers of hope and dread. Glancing at Max and Emma, she weighed her choices, each more grim than the last. The echo of Lucy's laughter taunted from the mirror, each note a reminder that time was running out. Shadows swirled and crept, hungry for their fears, yearning for a sacrifice that felt inevitable. "Mom, please, we need to go," Emma urged, her voice trembling, realizing the weight of the decision creeping closer. "What if we just break it?" she added, glancing at the mirror that flickered enticingly. "Break it? That's exactly what it wants." Sarah gasped, staring into the wild reflections of her children, seeing their stark terror mirrored back. "It wants us to act out of fear. We have to face it instead." "Face what?" Max's voice cracked, pulling Sarah's focus back to him. She could feel the urgency mounting, the shadows weaving tighter around them. They were out of time. In that moment, clarity struck like a lightning bolt. "The lighthouse isn't just a prison. It needs a reckoning," she declared, her voice lifting above the chaos. "What do you mean?" Emma asked, her brow furrowed, fear still etched into her features. "The darkness draws its power from fear and sacrifice, but we don't have to give in," Sarah replied, her heart racing. "What if we take back our choice? What if we light our own path?" As if summoned by her determination, the lantern flared brighter, illuminating the room, dispelling some shadows from the edges. Sarah felt her resolve strengthen. They had to channel this power, the strength of their fear, not to succumb, but to overcome it. "Focus on each other," Sarah exclaimed. "Remember love. Remember hope." Emma and Max huddled closer, joining hands with their mother, their eyes locking with fierce determination that belied their fear. "On three," Sarah shouted. 1, 2. As she shouted 3, they raised the lantern high, every ounce of love and defiance pouring into its glow. The shadows writhed and recoiled as the light burned fiercely, igniting the cursed space around them. In that instant, she saw Lucy's twisted figure attempt to flee, the mirage of her daughter contorted in anguish. "No, you shall not take my children. We choose light," Sarah screamed, the very fabric of her being roaring with strength. The mirror shattered explosively, fragments scattering like stars across the darkened room. This was not just an escape, but a confrontation. The shadows roared in chaos, thrashing wildly as they were consumed by the blinding light emanating from the lantern. "Together," Sarah yelled, pushing forth with their combined resolve. They were resilient, powerful. Light surged forward, engulfing the shadows, swallowing their chilling laughter into a deafening silence. "Let go of us." Emma's voice pierced the stillness, demanding. The lantern pulsed rhythmically, its glow now pulsating with life energy as darkness retreated, revealing fragments of joyful memories within its framed sunsets, laughter and love shared. The shadows twisted, their anguished cries fading like echoes, suffocated by the radiant warmth. In that luminous moment, Sarah found herself standing before the altar, the light drawing closer as they grasped hands tighter. The final shudder rippled through the room, and with one last scream that seemed to shake the lighthouse to its core, the darkness dissolved, a suffocating presence evaporating before them. Relief washed over, and the room illuminated fully, casting away memories of despair and loss. Suddenly, clarity settled in. The overwhelming pressure lifted, dimming into a gentle glow that surrounded them like a cool breeze. Outside, the storm began to subside as dawn broke, light seeping through windows that hadn't let day touch them for what felt like an eternity. Sarah blinked, and slowly, the figures of her children transformed, filing back into reality. They appeared untouched, safe. Emma fell against her, pulling Max close. "Did we do it?" she asked, voice trembling. "Yes." Sarah let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. We've broken the cycle. We're free. The lantern, its power still warm, felt heavier in her hands. But there was triumph now, not fear. Memories of dread lingered, but love anchored them in their newfound freedom. Together, they maneuvered back through the lighthouse, steps echoing with newfound hope. Doors that had once seemed like barriers now swung open, revealing sunlight streaming inside, illuminating the lighthouse as if it chose to breathe anew. As they stepped outside onto the cliff's edge, the lake glittered beneath the rising sun, washing over them like peace. The struggles faced, the shadows chased, finally felt like distant memories. "We found each other," Sarah said, a smile breaking through her tears. "And that's all that matters." The darkness was finally behind them. Harrow's Point would remain an echo of what they had faced, a whispered tale of shadows overtaken by light. As the lighthouse stood sentinel, it cast a welcoming glow. The Williams family had emerged from the shadows, bound together tighter than ever, ready to embrace their next chapter. Now, dear viewer, if you enjoyed this spine-chilling conclusion, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that will have you on the edge of your seat. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. It's vital for us. Each click helps grow this amazing family we have here. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. Your thoughts mean the world to us, so let us hear them. And don't wait even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who absolutely need to hear this conclusion. Remember, only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.